Hi guys, I'm going to teach you Git source control in under 15 minutes. I'm only going to cover the basics in this video, which is enough to give you a work knowledge of Git to collaborate and implement source control on any project. First of all, let's download Git from git-scm.com/downloads. Once we get our installer, this window will appear and just click install. Now, over to a quick diagram. Source control is the practice of tracking and managing changes. It's essential if you're developing a software project to prevent you and your team from losing their work and being unable to roll back a bad deployment. Git holds your files in fancy containers called repositories. You have both a local, meaning on your computer, and a remote repository, which is on a server somewhere. Between your local repository and your projects folder, there is a staging area. You manage your staging area using the git add and the git-rm commands. These add and remove your files. You can then git commit the files in your staging area to your local repository. This will save the project files to your local repository, which can then be saved to the remote repository using git push. Alternatively, you can pull changes from your remote repository into your local repository and projects folder using git pull. Let's begin our practical segment by creating a remote repository on github.com. Let's navigate to the plus symbol on the top right hand side corner and click New Repository. This will then bring us to this form where we can name our repository and choose public or private. Finally, let's click Create Repository. Our repository is now created on GitHub for us. Let's copy this URL and navigate to our example project folder. Let's Git Bash here. And now we're in our terminal and ready to use Git commands. Let's type git init and press enter to create our Git repository, and git add to add a specific file. Alternatively, we can do git add and asterisk as a wildcard to add everything in this folder to our staging area. We can then use git commit to save our changes in our staging area to our local repository. We can name our commit using -m and quotation marks. Once our changes are committed to our local repository, we can then git push them to GitHub, which is hosting our remote repository. We can do this with git push, followed by the URL of our remote repository, followed by the name of the branch. In this case, it will be master. I will cover branches in a later video. When our push is completed, we can go to github.com and refresh. Notice that our files are copied over to our remote repository now. If we go back to our projects folder and modify one of our files, you can see here I've added a second line of code with an annotation saying bug. We can then git add our changes, followed by git commit and naming our commit to our local repository. We can then git push our additional changes to a remote repository. Once our push is complete, we can go back to GitHub and refresh to ensure that our changes are reflected in the remote repository. We can see that the name of our latest commit exists here, and if we click into the file, we can see line 2 with our bug exists here also. To remove our bug from our repository, we have to use a command called git revert. If we go to our commits on GitHub, we can view the latest commit, along with the ID on the right hand side that we can use to identify this to GitHub. We can then use the git revert command to roll back the commit we push this change to the repository in. We can type git revert followed by the ID stored in GitHub, and this will open a command line text editor called vim. We can simply exit vim using the colon and q command followed by enter. Because the changes are now in our local repository, we will push our rollback or revert to our remote repository using git push. When this is completed, we go to github.com and refresh our commits. We will see an additional commit exists there, which is just revert, and the name of the commit it is reverting. If we go back to the code in our remote repository and check the affected file, we will notice that the second line containing the bug is now gone. Finally, let's learn how to pull files from our remote repository into our local projects folder and local repository. If we go to github.com, click clone or download, click the URL and copy it to our clipboard. Then let's go to our local projects folder, right click, click Git Bash here, and our terminal opens. Let's git initialize our local repository and then git pull, followed by the URL of our remote repository and the branch we'll be pulling from, which is master. When that's completed, we will then see the files copied into our project folder. In this video, we learned what Git is, local and remote repositories, adding and removing to your staging area, pushing and pulling to and from your remote repository, and reverting a commit. Please do let me know in the comments below if this video helped you, or if you have any ideas on how I can improve my content. Thank you all very much for watching, and best of luck.